What up, gang? Carolina Jackpot time coming at you. It is Tuesday evening, and it is time for the 2024 Clemson Tigers college football preview and prediction video. Before we get into that, just a few things. If you're new around here, consider staying true around here. Subscribe to the Carolina Jackpot channel if you're not subscribed to it already, and hit this video with a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. I would also appreciate it if you would share this video somewhere. Share it via Facebook Messenger. Share it to someone's Twitter DM. Share it to Instagram DM. Wherever you share things that you come across on social media that you find helpful, send it to another Clemson fan. We got to get the word out about the Carolina Jackpot channel. I appreciate the people that have shared videos so far, and I can tell y'all been sharing those videos because the number of subscribers on this channel has gone up a little bit. Been a little bit of an uptick the past couple of weeks, and I really appreciate that. Also, down in the description box below, there will be a link to PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. If you would like to throw Carolina Jackpot $1, $2, or $5, whatever, it doesn't matter. I would really appreciate that. I did see in the comments section today, and I responded to it, that one of my subscribers was on another YouTube channel of another fan base, and he said they were just doing nothing but asking for super chats, and that was real annoying. He was glad that I didn't do that. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to be that guy, but it's always nice to get a little bit of extra cheese on your Whopper. I don't make a lot of money doing this, and any little donation helps out. So that'll be in the description box below of this video, as it is in all the videos. So just going to leave that there, and now it's time to get into Clemson. Just looking back at the 2023 season, it was kind of a tale of two seasons. You looked really bad the first half of the year. You're sitting here with a 4-4 record, and things looked pretty bad. There was a lot of infighting amongst the fan base. You had a guy named Tyler from Spartanburg calling into Dabo Swinney's radio show and not really being disrespectful to him. He was kind of asking Dabo some hard questions, right? And he really didn't answer them. He just kind of blew up and let everybody know that he was the coach and we were going to do it his way. But something was to that, because it kind of ignited things a little bit after that. And you went 4-0 down the stretch to finish the regular season 8-4. And then you went to Jacksonville to play in the Gator Bowl, and you won that also 38-35 against the Kentucky Wildcats. So you won your bowl game, which is a huge positive, but that long streak of 10 win seasons in a row is finally snapped. Looking at 2024, I mean, can we build on the end of 2023? Maybe so. Dabo overall is 170-43. All that at Clemson. He took over kind of in the middle of the 2008 season after Tommy Bowden was fired as an interim coach, and then he became the actual head coach after the South Carolina game, which I believe he won 31-14. And he's been the head man there ever since. 25 of Dabo's 43 losses came from the time he took over as interim head coach through the end of the 2010 season, and then from the 2021 season through the 2023 season. So there was a 10-year clip there where Dabo only lost 18 games. That's pretty stout. National championships in 2016 and 2018. Now, that was with a couple of generational quarterbacks. Everybody knows Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson. You're not bringing in those kind of quarterbacks anymore. Can Clemson get back to national championship caliber sometime in the near future? I'm kind of in the camp of no, they can't, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. What's Las Vegas think about the Taters? FanDuel has you right now at 9.5 wins. That's for your over-under win total for the 2024 season. There's also a heavy lean to the under at minus 170. So the people who gamble on sports for a living kind of think that Clemson's not going to win more than 9 games in 2023, or excuse me, 2024. In 2023, last year, your over-under win total was also set at 9.5, just for reference. Recruiting-wise, you pulled in the number 11 class in 2024. Not a bad class. Had a couple 5-stars there. T.J. Moore, wide receiver out of the Tampa, Florida area. He was number 6 player in the state of Florida. You also pull in Sammy Brown from Jefferson, Georgia. He was the number 2 player in the state of Georgia. He'll play linebacker for you. He also played running back in high school. This guy will step on the field and make an impact immediately. Also brought in Brian Wesco, a very high 4-star out of the state of Texas, who also will be a wide receiver for you. And a lot of people who are in the know think that Wesco will probably be a better prospect than T.J. Moore. But both these guys are really good, and they should impact your wide receiver room in a positive way in 2024. Transfer portal. No need to even talk about it. You didn't bring in any transfers this year. You didn't bring any transfers in the year before. Dabo kind of likes to pretend that he's using the portal or that he's trying to use the portal, but it's kind of like this. Here, I'm going to study for my test. Okay, I studied. I'm done. A couple days later, damn, I don't know why I got an F on that test. He pretends to make an effort to use the portal, but he doesn't. He's not going to use it, and there's nothing that's going to change his mind. He believes in the old-fashioned method of recruiting guys from high school, bringing them in, developing them, making them into stars, and then replacing them with more high schoolers, just pulling in good recruiting classes. And it's worked. It has worked there for many years. But the thing is, you were winning championships in 2016, 2018. You made the championship game in 2019. You went to the playoffs in 2020. There was no transfer portal then. So nobody else was using the transfer portal because there wasn't one to use. Now they've got an advantage over you in that you have some holes on this roster. There are some places where players that are maybe not getting the playing time at other schools they want. Maybe they're not getting the NIL money at other schools they want. Could come and help you. And the thing is, and I hate to say this because you guys know, if you watch this channel enough, can't stand Clemson. Freaking hate them. But these kids would come there. They would come there. You have a tradition of winning at a high level. You also have a track record of developing guys and putting them in the league. Let's see. I mean, you had 5 guys drafted off last year's team. I mean, what kid who was looking for a place to land wouldn't look at you if he knew that you took transfers? So I don't think that your system is the best, sir. I just don't. I'm solidly in the camp of 95% of everyone else that's a college football fan who just sees this from afar. And this is not me being biased as a Gamecock fan and saying whatever Dabo does is wrong. I just don't like him because he coaches Clemson. That's not it. It's not it at all. I think that you need to use every resource that you have at your disposal. But one's got to wonder, does he not use this as a recruiting pitch to some of those kids? Hey, come play linebacker for me, Sammy Brown. You know, don't go to LSU. You know, you might not play too good for a few games there, and you end up losing your job, and they're going to bring some guy in from Oregon to replace you. We don't do that here. We just coach you up. It makes a little bit of sense, and I've got to wonder if that kind of doesn't go on a little bit. All right, offensively, Clemson last year struggled, to say the least. Cade Klubnik, your quarterback, who will be your starter again this year, 19 touchdowns through the air, 9 interceptions. 2,844 yards. He also ran for 182 yards and 4 touchdowns. The guy had a quarterback rating of 55. That's the 80th in FBS. That's pretty bad. He looked uncomfortable at times to me. Did not look like a leader out there for most of the season. And unfortunately, you dealt with some wide receiver injuries and just an overall lack of production from that room. And I believe that hurt him a lot. And that's just in the opinion of Carolina Jackpot. Not great offensive line play also hurt as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. In your wide receiver room, you do bring back Tyler Brown, who led your team last year with 530 yards as a freshman. And Antonio Williams, who was a guy as a freshman in 2022, showed some signs of being a really good player for the future. He got hurt after about 5 games last year and was lost for the season. He'll be back. That's really going to be a big help as well. TJ Moore, the 5 stars I mentioned before, and then Brian Wesco will both come in and probably make some sort of an impact on that wide receiver room pretty early. Jake Brenningstool also returns at tight end. Good tight end. He's played a lot of football at Clemson. These are all positives for you. You were once known as wide receiver U back when you had Sammy Watkins, you had DeAndre Hopkins, you're sitting here, Deion Kane, Ray McLeod, T. Higgins, Justin Ross. All these guys were huge during their time at Clemson from the wide receiver position, and you just have not been that lately. Now, these guys aren't going to get you back to that, but they'll get you one step closer to that, and definitely much further along than what you were last year. At running back, Phil Mafah returns with 965 yards on the ground and 13 touchdowns. He's a solid player, but you don't really have a clear backup behind Phil Mafah. You've got to kind of have some kind of 1-2 punch. And this is another place right here where maybe the transfer portal could have helped you out. But you don't use it, so we don't know. Your backup running back position looks like it's going to be a couple of freshmen that came in the 2023 class. Maybe one of those guys will step up, but you've got to have somebody to spell Phil Mafah. Now, he can shoulder the load, but he's got to have someone to spell him at some point during these games. 4 starters return on your offensive line, which is a good thing. You do need to find a center to replace Will Putnam, who is no longer there. Clemson's offensive line was not great last year. It hasn't been great for a while. And, for all the success that Clemson has had defensively up front, one would think that they would have had more success than what they have had on the offensive line. Because most teams that have really good defensive lines have a good offensive line too. It's like the line of scrimmage thing is kind of part of the culture. And we really just have not seen that there for some time. So defensively, that's going to be the strength of your team, as it always is. You'll have to go back to you'd have to go back to before Brent Venables came around in, I think, 2012, maybe 2013. Maybe I'm right in saying that, to find a time when Clemson fielded a defense that wasn't among the nation's best. It's always good every year. It's kind of like you can count on that. You only return 3 starters on that side of the ball, 3 full-time starters. But you've got a ton of guys over there who've gotten some experience. Clemson uses their depth on defense to rotate the young guys in and out to get them playing time. And that's why going into 2024, even with the loss of a good bit of players over there on that side of the ball, you're really not going to miss a beat, I don't think. I'm high on T.J. Parker and Peter Woods, your defensive ends. These guys are going to give you a nice push and put some pressure on a lot of quarterbacks this season. Number 0, Barrett Carter, absolute stud at linebacker. Second on your team in tackles with 67. This guy's an All-American prospect, guys. In the secondary, this is where things get a little bit dicey. You lost Andrew Makuba and Toriano Pride to the transfer portal, and you took some hits over there as far as the draft as well. But you do return R.J. Mickens, a senior, another guy who's played a lot of football at Clemson, and Khalil Brown, who is kind of a versatile defensive back that's kind of all over the field. Smart player, too, as well. I thought I would note this. He's the one last year in the South Carolina game, if you remember, Spencer Rattler threw the little swing pass on the first play of the game that actually was a backwards lateral. It might have only been by that much, but that's what it was called. And Barnes was aware enough of what was going on to pick that thing up and run it into the end zone. I don't think that every defensive back on every team would have done that. I mean, I think that a ton of them would have just let that ball go dead there, but he didn't. You've got some pieces to be okay in your defensive backfield, but you still have got some holes there, and that may be a bit of a vulnerable spot for you guys at some point this season. Another position that you're going to have to replace somebody in that not a lot of people talk enough about is your place kicker. The kid, and I called him Frosty Tips, can't even remember what his name is now, but he's the one that Dabo went and got to quit his job on Wall Street and come back and join the Clemson team. He'd been on the team in 2022, and he ended up being a pretty solid place kicker. Now, this kid that's going to be your kicker this year, Robert Gunn III, is the guy that he replaced. And he replaced him because Robert Gunn wasn't doing very well. We'll have to see if he has improved any in the year since his job was taken by Mr. Frosty Tips. All right, so we've gone over offense, defense, and special teams. Now it's time to throw the schedule up on the board over here beside me, and we're going to go down this slate, and we are going to pick a winner and a loser for each one of Clemson's games in 2024. Let's get to it. All right, now just looking at this slate, you've got a few games on here that Carolina Jackpot likes to call the gimme games. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. 9-7, or September the 7th, against Appalachian State. Carolina Jackpot is going to give you a win on that one automatically. Clemson is not going to lose to App State. I know there are a really good group of 5 team, picked to finish first in the Sun Belt this year. They return a lot of experience, but there's no scenario where Appalachian State should really even be competitive with Clemson after halftime. This will be a night game in Death Valley. This one, we already know this is a night game. You've got several games that we have a start time for, but the ACC is not like the SEC. We don't have start times for games way on down through the schedule. They're not showing us what the flex times are and that stuff that we've seen with the SEC. It's helpful to know that stuff when you're picking these games, too, because night games and day games in a lot of these stadiums are very different. The crowds are much more intense at nighttime. But you're not losing that game. Clemson will beat Appalachian State on September 28th, the game at home against Stanford. Clemson's not losing that one. Stanford will be one of, if not the worst teams in the ACC. Just a really, really bad time for Stanford to be coming into a totally new conference with totally new competition. They're going to have a rough time for a while here. And this is a team that I don't know if they're ever going to be able to really compete. They're not going to utilize the NIL money the way that a lot of other teams are. Those are just one of the teams that's probably going to fall into the have-not category. And it's kind of sad because Stanford at one time had a pretty good football program. And November 23rd, the Citadel in-state FCS team, which I think won one game last year. So Clemson won't have a problem there with them. All right, let's get into the other 9 games here. On August 31st, you're taking on Georgia in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, Georgia. It's a neutral site game, but almost like a home game for UGA. Moving the ball on the ground is going to be a problem for Clemson in this game. Georgia's very strong up front. I think that you could possibly pick some yards up through the air against Georgia, because if they do have any weakness, their secondary is obviously it's going to be uber talented, but it's just a little bit inexperienced. But the thing is, you also lack the wide receiver experience, I think, to take advantage of that, because you've got a couple of guys that are studs, but this is going to be their first game in a college uniform. I think this could be kind of a lower scoring affair because Georgia's had a tendency to kind of struggle out of the gate. Now, all the Georgia fans are going to point to me and tell me about their 2022, 51-3 win against Oregon to start the season. I know, okay? As a rule, you've kind of started out of the gate slow. But I don't see there being any way Clemson wins this game. Georgia's just too talented. They return, probably either the best or he's 1A with Quinn Ewers quarterbacking the SEC there, and Carson Beck. He's got a bevy of good wide receivers. I think Georgia's going to move the ball through the air a lot more this year than what you're used to seeing, and they're going to beat you. On the 21st, you're taking on NC State at home. NC State has not won in Death Valley since 2002. That statistic kind of, made me look at this game a little bit differently. I'm high on NC State this year, but I think with them, with a new quarterback there, in Grayson McCall, I think that they may get exposed a little bit by that Clemson defense. And the only real weapon right now that I see at wide receiver is KC Concepcion. Now, I know they have brought some players in, but it's kind of an unproven unit there. Defensively, I think NC State's going to take a step back, and that's probably going to be their Achilles heel in this game. I think you get the win here against NC State at home on the 21st. You've got Stanford in there. The next game, we already talked about that. Then you go on the road on October 5th for a huge matchup at Florida State. And I got to tell you, I went back and forth on this game when I was trying to pick it. It was kind of one of the harder ones that I've had to pick in I've done 3 videos now predicting games. But this was one of the ones that I kind of struggle with a lot, and I've had to kind of weigh out the pros and cons a little bit. Florida State, they lost a lot of talent, and everybody's talking about that. But the thing is, they've brought in some really good players there to replace that lost talent. Running back Roydell Williams from Alabama, that's going to be huge there in terms of replacing Trey Benson. Defensive lineman Marvin Jones, transfer from Georgia, is going to really help you out there with a lost Jared Verse, along with Patrick Payton on that defensive line, all ACC type of player. They're going to be strong again this year. You've got to give Mike Norvell some credit as a developer, and in terms of on the offensive side of the football. DJ Uyunglele taking over as quarterback, and this is the second time he's transferred. He transferred to Oregon State last year, and we saw him develop a little bit as a quarterback there under Jonathan Smith in that system. I put up better numbers than what he'd been putting up at Clemson the year before. He didn't look really comfortable in Clemson or at Clemson in 2022. looked a little bit more like a natural quarterback at Oregon State. Now, he kind of struggled at the end of the year, so not really sure why he fell off there, but I expect that he's going to take another step forward under Mike Norvell. Now, we saw some tape of him throwing during the spring. He didn't look great, but that was during the spring. We've still got some more time to develop, and I think that you're going to really see a good quarterback there. I don't know really about this amazing culture thing at Florida State that everybody likes to talk about. Look, I mean, all your players quit last year for the bowl game because you get picked to go to the playoffs. So people will talk about Mike Norvell and having an amazing culture. Carolina Jackpot's not so sold on that. But I do think that he is a really good coach and a good developer of players. And I think they beat you. I think that you drop this game, and that will be the second in a row to Florida State. And that's going to hurt a little bit because you guys are the 1-2. You're the big fish in the ACC. Losing to them 2 years in a row is going to be kind of a difficult pill to swallow. But this one being on the road, I just don't feel good about you getting that win. Sitting here at 3-2, and then you go on the road on the 12th. You take on Wake Forest in Winston-Salem. When it's not going to be a very good team this year. They lost their last 5 games at the end of last season. And Wake Forest is quickly kind of turning into another one of those have-not teams. Dave Clawson will bring someone in. They develop him into a decent player. They hit the transfer portal. It's got to be kind of tough to deal with there at times as a head coach. Not making a bowl last year was the first time in 7 years that Wake Forest has not competed after the season was over with, which is kind of strange to think about. You don't think about Wake Forest being a every year bowl team, but they had been. You're sitting here at 4-2 now. On the 19th, in comes Virginia. The Cavaliers. Tony Elliott comes back to Clemson. He brings his team with him. 2 quarterbacks there, kind of ran a 2-quarterback system there. Tony Muskett was the one guy, and the other one, the last name Calandria. I like the Calandria guy. Got a little bit of moxie to himself. Tends to throw the ball to the other team a little bit too much, which is a problem. We were 3-9 last year, and they lost 5 games by a total of 17 points. So there are a lot of net close losses for Virginia. And I think Tony Elliott's got this team slowly improving. Slowly they'll come around. They've got to get a lot better defensively, though. You'll beat them in Death Valley and go to 5-2. But I don't think it's going to be easy. Clemson, Virginia don't play every year, and this is going to be a big deal for Tony Elliott to come back to Clemson. And he's going to give you a game there. You got a bye week, and then you're going on the road on November 2nd to take on Louisville. No, excuse me, this is a home game against Louisville. Sorry. These 2 teams have virtually played every year since 2014. They didn't play last year, but there have been a lot of close games between the 2 of you guys. There's been a lot of blowouts, too. And it's all went in Clemson's favor. Louisville, with Coach Jeff Brom, brought in 31 transfers for this season. So it looks like a totally different team. They did make the ACC championship game last year. Really, really disappointing performance against Florida State. I kind of thought that they may end up winning that thing, because Florida State didn't have the Jordan Travis, but it was really a not a very good game, not a good show in there from Louisville, and they lost. And if I'm not mistaken, they lost their bowl game as well. But in comes quarterback Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech. He's played a lot of football there, and this team's going to be really good defensively, going to be sneaky good. Louisville's always going to be loaded with speed. They had 36 sacks last year. Brom's not going to be intimidated going to Clemson. This is another guy that's a really good coach. With the team that I'm high on, I think they beat you. Call me dumb, but I think that Louisville finally gets that Clemson monkey off their back. And this is the game that you maybe lose that you shouldn't. But you're 5-3 after you drop this one to Louisville, after you've kind of reeled off a few wins in a row here. You kind of have a disappointing one here, and you lose to Louisville. Things are going to get better, though, because you do go on the road on the 9th of November. You're on the road at Virginia Tech, and this may be a night game at Lane Stadium. We don't know right now. Enter Sandman, all that stuff. It's going to be a huge game for Virginia Tech, and I think you win this game. I'm not sold on Virginia Tech the way that the rest of the country seems to be sold on them. You look at their schedule up to this point when they play Clemson, it's conceivable that they could be 8-1 or at worst 7-2. But it's going to be a really fool's gold 8-1 or 7-2. Just take a look at the Virginia Tech schedule and let me know what you people think about that. It's a joke. It is an absolute cakewalk. Last year, down the stretch, they had a string of wins there. They've claimed that they're back. They're this new quarterback they got, this Drones guy, is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but if you guys go back and look at some of those wins, look at who they beat. Syracuse, Boston College. Those were not good. Pittsburgh, those were not good teams. The good teams they played, Florida State, blown out. Louisville, got blown out. NC State, didn't win. They did win their bowl game against Tulane. Congratulations, I guess. Tulane was a good Group of 5 team last year, but the Michael Pratt, quarterback for Tulane, wasn't gone. So was the guy that transferred out and went to Tennessee that was one of their wide receiver. They were operating on about half strength. So Virginia Tech should have been able to flex their muscle against a half-strength Group of 5 Tulane team. I'm not that impressed with them. I think Clemson goes on the road, and I think you'll beat them. You've kind of been dominant against them as of late, which you don't play them very often, but you did at one point, and I think you continue to flex your muscles against the Hokies there, and you win that one. You're 6-3. You go on the road the next week. You're at Pittsburgh, so we're back-to-back road games here. This team has had a terrible 2023. Finished up 3-9, their worst record in 25 years. And they're not going to be a lot better in 2024. They've only got 2 starters returning on a defense that wasn't very good. So, maybe that is a good thing. They're bringing in a new offensive coordinator, guy from Western Carolina, an FCS school that averaged 38 points per game last year. And he's bringing his running back, who's ran for 1,700 yards in 2 years, and a wide receiver who's went for 1,400 yards the past 2 years. It seems like you're headed in the right direction there with that. And that seems a little bit like a project to me, too. Now, we've seen FCS players come in and make an impact before. But with the rest of the roster that you've got there, I don't see that working out. I think Clemson gets the win here. They go to 7-3 on the year, and Pat Narduzzi is definitely going to be on the hot seat at the end of 2024. Of course, you're going to get that win on November the 23rd against the Citadel. You'll go to 8-3 there, and then on the 30th of November, you play my Gamecocks in Death Valley. If you've watched my South Carolina preview already, you know how this game's going to go. I think Clemson gets the win here. Defensively, I just think that they're going to be too much of an issue for what South Carolina has to offer offensively. Although I do think South Carolina is going to put more points up on the board than they did last year. I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to do. I mean, all you got to do is score more than freaking 7. But as has been the tendency for South Carolina late in the year, we've seen a lot of injuries. I have to think that trend may continue in 2024. This is a road game. South Carolina won the last time in Clemson. You got some revenge last year, but I don't think you've exactly been able to exact that revenge the way you want to, because South Carolina coming into Clemson and winning is just totally unheard of. And I think this is going to be a good ball game. But in the end, I think Clemson's depth on the defensive side of the football once again is going to be just too much for South Carolina to overcome, much as it was last year, and you'll get that win. You're going to finish up 9-3 with 2 conference losses, those being to Florida State and to Louisville. So I don't think that's probably going to be able to get you into. It may be enough to get you into the ACC championship game. You may rematch with Florida State, or Florida State may stub their toe somewhere, and you may play someone else. But 2 conference losses and that loss to UGA, I think you would absolutely have to win the conference championship to get into the college football playoffs. So I think the under 9.5 wins is correct for Clemson, and I also think that them not being able to make it in the college football playoffs is correct as well. Once again, guys, this is just Carolina Jackpot's opinion. This is not a shot at Clemson. I think you're going to have a really, really good team this year. I just think that inexperienced secondary may come and bite you in that game against Florida State, and I think it may come to bite you in the game against Louisville as well. The shut guy can move the ball vertically down the field, and I think you'll have a tough time there. But the other games, they all seem to be very winnable to me. So let me know down in the comment section below what you think Clemson's record is going to be in 2024. And you guys and gals have a great evening. I'll see y'all later. Peace, and I'm out of here. Catch y'all in the next.